We've been around for a half a dozen years. We've collected about 5.5 million lab values. So even if someone doesn't have all of their lab values, we basically are running an artificial intelligence program that looks at their gender, age, their race, even in their zip code and time of year. And with about plus or minus 6%, we can offer up a calculation based on that information. The idea is for every patient that walks in the door, they get a complete report. Part of it's going to be based on blood labs, part of it's going to be based on demographics. But because we've been around for a while, been able to collect that data, that's really the hallmark of the system and helping save time, give accuracy, really get that integrative, customized approach for a patient.
Welcome to Personalized by Vitamin Lab, the show where we dive deep into the world of personalization in healthcare. I'm your host, Dr. David Dizer. Please remember that the following discussion is for educational purposes only, and it's not intended to diagnose or treat any disease. Speak with your healthcare practitioner first before integrating anything that you learned today. Join us as we explore the remarkable stories, breakthroughs, and possibilities that come with the pursuit of personalized healthcare. Welcome back to Personalized by Vitamin Lab. I'm your host, Dr. David Dizer. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today on the show, I spoke with Jon Orban, founder of Integrated Genetic Solutions, IGS, which develops a software to optimize epigenetic health. Jon's great to chat with, and if you're interested in learning about the future of objective functional medicine assessments, this episode is for you. Jon himself started his career in the U.S. Army. He went to Special Forces Assessment and Selection, and then to Special Operations Medical School. He performed his medical rotations at Reynolds Hospital and then did special duty at 7th Special Forces Group. After the military, he went into investment banking and quickly became a managing director at Westpark Capital after inventing a new way to finance mid-market companies. He decided to carve his own path by founding Third Pillar, a commercial lending and leasing software firm. Third Pillar quickly became the world's leading fintech underwriting platform. Then Jon returned to his roots in medicine by founding and running a chain of wellness and health optimization clinics known as GeneSolve. Listen to this episode to find out how Jon is supporting physicians with software tailored to helping patients reach their optimal wellness. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Jon Orban. Welcome to Personalized. I'm here with Jon Orban. Hi, Jon. How are you today?
Hey, David, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing well. Good to see you again. We had a chance to meet a little while ago, so I learned a little bit about you, and I'm quite inspired by your journey, and I wanted to have a good chance to chat with you about the service that you're providing to practitioners and all the good work that you're doing. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, David. Always good to see you again.
Let's get into it. So your company's called IGS, and your product's called Archimedes. Can you tell me a little bit about the service that you offer to integrative medicine practitioners, physicians, and naturopathic doctors?
Sure. What we offer is the ability to do calculations based on lab values. So a simple way of putting that is if you look at the 80th percentile for most things, some things are 50th or 20th percentile, we're doing the pharmaceutical calculations, comparing where someone's lab values are, and if you'd like to get to the 80th percentile, how you get them there. So vitamins, minerals, electrolytes, hormones, aminos, a lot of things that drive an epigenetic response. So some of the problems that exist for this is, number one, just time. There's really nothing we're doing that a physician couldn't do if they had 30 hours, 25 hours. They'd have to research all those values and then get out the pen and piece of paper and Excel spreadsheets or driving that through. But the second piece is looking at multiple different labs from different locations. So obviously, people don't want to spend extra money or extra time getting lab values done. So we can amalgamate, one lab from LabCorp, one from Quest, one from Sonora, one from Diagnostics, and put them all together to produce a report that's really easy for that healthcare provider to use. And then they can share that with their patient. So the patient can see where they are comparatively to that 80th percentile or 20th percentile, depending on what it is. And from there, they can order those things through a third party with a clickable button.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
We're doing a ton of optimal performance for athletes in our clinic here, but the main people who come to see me is people who have been through a lot, have a significant medical history, have experienced lots of chronic disease, have turned it around with what we've been offering, right? Like have done really well, but now want to know like what is the optimal? How can we go to max? We're seeing it so much like with people studying YouTube physicians, for example, and trying to learn about optimal performance. And it sounds like it's a sweet time for your company.
It's really well timed. I mean, we've been around for a half a dozen years. We've collected about 5.5 million lab values. So even if someone doesn't have all of their lab values, we basically are running an artificial intelligence program that looks at their gender, their age, a couple other things like their race, even in their zip code and time of year. And with about plus or minus 6%, we can offer up a calculation based on that information. So there'll be outliers for sure, and that's always up to the physician to look at. You never treat a lab. We all know that. But this really helps get someone going down the road. So the idea is for every patient that walks in the door, they get a complete report. Part of it's going to be based on blood labs. Part of it's going to be based on demographics. But because we've been around for a while, been able to collect that data, that's really the hallmark of the system and helping save time, give accuracy, really get that integrative, customized approach for a patient.
This is so interesting to me. I see this as being the future. Like in Canada here, they've been recommending everyone take vitamin D for a while.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
It is, yeah.
We could be in a scenario, right, where using what your company is offering, where we, instead of being like, say, the whole country of Canada needs this one thing, we could say for every region, I assume this is what you're doing. I'm like simplifying it because my brain is like the size of a pea. But we could be saying like in Vancouver, here's what we need. The food supply is really low on this or that, and it's showing up in all the labs. So everyone could probably benefit on average from an approach like this. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it is. So, David, I don't know if you remember like the rivalry between, East versus West during the Soviet era, right? We all thought that they were on all sorts of performance enhancing drugs, and some of the East Germans were, but for the most part, they were so poor they couldn't afford anything. What they were doing is they were writing everything down. They took notes. They didn't have a theory. They just said, okay, this person's going to do 5 sets. This person's going to do 10 sets. This person's going to do 20. And they happened to notice that all the gold medal winners for gymnastics did 20 sets. So then everyone did 20 sets. And they had no theory on this. So our play isn't trying to really figure out why, but we're just looking at the data coming in. So we actually have it down to zip code here in the United States. And the reason being is if you look, for example, you might see a different food supply in different parts of the state here in the United States. So you look at like the city of Edmonton, big place, right? You may have differing values because people may have different food sources in that one area. So we try to narrow it down as far as we possibly can. And then we run an inference engine. So if you're, two ends of the spectrum, all lab values or all demographic systems. But let's just say you had A, D, and E done, but didn't have K. We can actually get within a good measurement what your K would actually be because they run in lockstep with A, D, and E. But obviously you have to have the values that we've collected over the last 6 years running through the system.
You really do. Wow, that's incredible. And I mean, there's also the cultural component. I'm about to take a course actually in economic geography, thinking about the differences between economic capacity and development in different regions of the world. But from a health standpoint, it's so fascinating to me because there's different cultures within different regions as well.
Sure.
And so I assume you could be looking at genetics or epigenetics, right? And I think you mentioned that already, that there's a genetic approach as well. Do you evaluate the genome?
We do. Each step takes things more and more customized. So, for example, if you had this factor 2 with the factor 5, the COMT, a big one is the MTHFR. They're all important, though. There is no one single switch.
Right.
These are what we refer to as small envelope improvements or small envelope disparities. So, I don't need to say his name, but there was a person who used to have a talk show, and every day, I found the magic solution to all your problems. You should have this one vitamin or have a blueberry or something like that. But what really it is, it's a whole series of things which are pebbles on a scale. And those pebbles on a scale will turn your epigenetic response towards you or against you. Now, when I say that, there's a couple different things to contemplate. So there's longevity and performance. short-term performance versus long-term performance. Now, long-term performance and longevity happen to go hand in hand in almost every study that you see. If you think about this from a tribal biology, how many old people do you need in the back of a cave to transfer knowledge? One man, one woman, maybe a backup man and a woman, right? Once someone becomes a negative calorie provider, your epigenetic response is much more fragile. So we try not to look at it as a 0 or a 1, but a spectrum between tens of thousands of switches. So you think about like a BRCA1 or BRCA2, and we all know that that is associated with breast cancer. But what actually initiates that? When does breast cancer actually turn on? We're not quite there yet. But what we do know is if you have a positive epigenetic response, you're going to have a much lower probability of having that BRCA1 or BRCA2 engaged with having cancer. And obviously there's different types of cancers. There's estrogen positive, estrogen negative. But if we've learned anything from COVID, we all have to be responsible for our own health. And with athletes coming in there to your shop, I mean, you've really turned the volume up on a lot of people coming through your location. And we've had a similar situation. The first couple of years, most of the people coming in were athletes or celebrities. The celebrities were trying to present a more healthy presence, which in turn was a more aesthetic, more attractive view. The athletes were looking for that 0.1% improvement. And obviously they didn't want to come up positive on doping controls. So this was a solution that really helped them. It goes hand in hand with a lot of things that you're doing, obviously a lot of lifestyle work and things of that nature. We're just a tool for the healthcare providers. It's a time-saving tool. It's an accuracy tool. It's something to give their patients that they can do easily, and they're going to drop their overall cost. So just an example, let's say you had 45 deficiencies, anywhere from you were in the 70th percentile down to the first percentile. You could take it to an extreme when you went out and would buy 45 different bottles of vitamins, minerals, electrolytes, hormones. That's very costly. It's exceptionally costly, and it's also costly from a time standpoint because, David, you have more going on than most people I know. I can't imagine you taking something from 45 bottles and spending an hour every day. That's not feasible. So if you could do all those calculations to get the exact dose, and then use one of the third parties, we use Vitamin Lab, and they provide a great solution for people because everything is just in one bottle, and it's the exact dose. Not too high, not too low, just like a vitamin should be. It's like a string on a violin, not too tight, not too loose.
Oh, that's a good analogy. What's the process for the practitioner? Like, say you're working with someone, do you need specific labs to be done in order to engage with your company? Like, what do you accept for data to get the process started?
Yeah, not with Archimedes, we don't. So it's good, better, best. Good is we would look at the 5.7 million lab values that have come through the system, and we'd run it through the AI system. And this would be based on someone, like I said before, their age, their gender, their race, time of year. We have different epigenetic responses. So you'll see the endocrine system more active in September, October. This has to do with basically wanting to have a pregnancy through the winter months. So when the child is born, you're more apt to have spring foods, things that are more of an access. So we look at all those things, and you get a complete report for everything. Now, if you do have labs done, it's going to raise the level of accuracy. The more labs, the more accurate. If you have everything done, it's going to be ridiculously accurate. Where the physician, where the healthcare provider, the nurse practitioner, the naturopath steps in is knowing the patient. And can't understate the value of this because, I always use the example, David, you were my patient, you were down in Costa Rica, you were surfing and you had a DVT. They gave you good old fashioned heparin. That works pretty freaking well. You come back, well, obviously you can wait for the clot to go away, you jump on a plane, you come home. I'm not going to give you vitamin K. I'm going to give you a coagulant with an anticoagulant. That would be ridiculous. So the process would be a patient comes in and says, maybe for their physical, you give them this report. And here's a very easy tool. Let's get some blood done for you with your physical, and we're going to make this report even more accurate. So right out of the gate, you're getting the patient to get on a road to improving their performance and their health. It makes it easier so they recover faster. When they do work out, they're going to get more out of their workouts. Their cognitive skills are going to be higher. They're going to be sick less. it's really all the things you think about. The people go in, and most healthcare providers, and they call that a white noise symptom. I have brain fog. Sleep some more.
Could be anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's a lot of things, right? It's the problem is it's how often is something one deficiency. So when I was doing my rotations, you do a differential diagnosis. So I come in to see you, and I'm not feeling well, and I have a headache. Is it a cold? Is it COVID? Is it flu? Is it dehydration? Most likely to least likely until I find something. Okay, well, that matters, and I'm done. But what if I have COVID and I'm dehydrated and I have cancer and I have an autoimmune? We weren't trained that way. And it's kind of hard for the human brains. We like zeros and ones. We like yeses and nos. We like those sort of things. So now we're looking at a whole bunch of things at the same time. So if you look at these, I think 7 of the top 10 white noise symptoms that someone goes into the healthcare provider. So weight gain, muscle loss, cognitive skills, and that's memory, brain fog, sleep, mood, immune system, how often they're getting sick.
Yeah,
Most of the time it's eat a salad, go to the gym, start sleeping better. And that never works for anybody, because if people could, they would. But they're not getting the baseline nutrients that they need to perform at that optimal level. And I think, David, I think you and I had talked about people saying, you don't need to age. Well, that's kind of silly. The question is, how fragile is your epigenetic response, and how do you optimize it, right? Like, you see these outliers and all these great zones that documented you and I were talking about. What they have is a lot more nutrients coming in, but there's different people that absorb things in different rates, have different access. So how do you, for lack of better terms, level the playing field with the outliers? And this is what that offers, really.
Oh, I love it.
If, David, I know you spend a fair amount of time with your patients, but this cuts the time that you have to spend with them dramatically, so you can spend more time being that healthcare provider versus trying to be a human calculator.
Well, I see a ton of value in it. And we see a lot of digestive conditions here, including malabsorption conditions.
Yeah.
And so, of course, from my standpoint, it's a no-brainer. What does your report look like? Are you is the recommendations back to the clinician simply about nutrients? Are you commenting on hormones and diet and exercise as well?
We're a one-trick pony. We do that one trick really well. We look at vitamins. We look at electrolytes. We look at aminos. We look at hormones. It's really everything that drives your body chemistry. When you start getting into things like diet, there's a lot of art to that. When people come into you for that, you're doing, you have an entire algorithm for that. I haven't seen.
I'm up all night making meal plans, my friend. I'm up at one. I sent a meal plan at 1:30 in the morning 2 nights ago, and the patient called it the other day, the next day, and was like, "That email came in at 1:30.
Yeah,
that's not good for you."
So,
come on, my friend. Okay.
You think about like the antibody test, like the IGEs. That's totally separate discipline.
Right.
And then you're trying to get involved, looking at their lifestyle, the exercise component. I mean, that's a whole nother discipline. We've had a lot of really interesting people come in that were great athletes, great trainers, great exercise physiologists. One of them was actually my coach, which is wonderful. But my program is different than your program. It's different from Casey's program, so on and so forth. So how much time do you have and all that sort of thing?
I've been doing a lot of N01 studies, John.
Yeah.
Where we find a deficiency, we correct it, and then we repeat the VO2 max, and we see where we stand. We see what it's like when the deficiency has been corrected from an exercise standpoint, from an exercise physiology standpoint. Where were the limitations before? And then when we fix the nutrient deficiency, do the limitations become resolved, even though we didn't train for those limitations? I think that's an interesting use of it.
Yeah. David, have you been doing LTO tests with that too, or just the VO2 max?
No, just VO2 max. I can do lots, but I haven't carved out time to do more.
Yeah, it's a lot. The other piece is heat resistance and cold resistance. It's a really good test that the military did on people before and after Ranger School. And they measured blood values for white blood cells, eosinophils, I think RBCs too. I'd have to go back and look at it again, but they also did a heat map on the genes associated with things like white blood cell production. If you can almost imagine a domino, mostly green and then red, and then was inverted when they got out. And, everybody will tell you what a big chunk of Ranger School is just being starved. Maybe you get a meal a day, maybe you don't. Everybody has a cold at the end. Everybody does.
Sure.
So, everybody's tired. Walking 20 feet seems like an anaerobic event for everybody going through there. And I would wonder with what you're doing, like if you could measure all those things, I mean, it'd be a huge undertaking. You have to get a massive grant to do all that. But common sense tells you where all that's going to go, for sure, especially with mitochondrial reaction.
Oh my goodness. In basic training, I got kicked in the side by my sergeant for falling asleep on the rifle in the grass at the end of 7 days of not sleeping. Oh my gosh. My ribs hurt for the second week.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, I totally get it. The study I always think about when I'm talking to someone about stress and immune function is the medical school study where they measured antibody responses after vaccines for medical students during exams and with less than 5 hours of sleep. And they found that the antibody responses to the vaccines were less. And so the stress of Ranger School, I think, also could be a contributor. You probably assess stress hormones in addition to sex hormones on your test. Do you have a look at the cortisol response?
We look at sex hormone binding globulin.
That's an important one for sure.
Yeah. To properly get a cortisol test, you really need to have it done at least 4 times, preferably 6 times in a day.
For sure.
You can do it in a hospital, but that's a lot. Just giving them a take-home test and having them, pee on the strips and then recording it is the most important thing is the curve versus the baseline. And I think you probably watch people come in and say, what does this cortisol mean? And your response was, how I can't tell. There's no way to tell. I need to put this in context. So we don't look at that. We look at sex hormone binding globulin simply because of what turns out to be things like free testosterone and what's driving them.
I'm interested in that. I did a test like this one time, John, and the only thing that came up was that my sex hormone binding globulin was too high. And I got no suggestions for that. So I'm still digging. And I have another person who I'm working with currently who's in a very similar circumstance, a rather healthy person, actually turns out to have low metabolism, low resting rate, and trying to figure out why the sex hormone binding globulin is so incredibly high.
I think it's because you have 17 jobs. You don't sleep enough, David. Yeah.
Maybe that's why.
There's 3 things. There's DIM. There's 2 supplements out there, but the one that actually, this is the one that works the most by a long shot, is actually meditation. And, David, I'm not if I can't measure it and I can't read a study on it that's peer reviewed, large sample set, repeatable, all that. Great book on it, whole series of studies done on it. Transcendental, actually, for whatever reason, and I don't actually understand all different types of meditations, but they were able to noticeably drop someone's sex hormone binding globulin in the test time during the test. Inversely, they were able to make it go up in another study by having them watch Schindler's List. Cortisol levels and sex hormone binding globulin went up for people while it was that fast of a response.
Vitamin Lab revolutionizes personalized supplements, empowering health practitioners to create tailored supplement formulations that address each patient's unique needs. Bring personalized health to your practice and choose from over 200 professional-grade ingredients to create vitamin formulas that improve patient adherence and result in tangible outcomes. All ingredients are sourced from the world's most trusted suppliers, and Vitamin Lab provides hands-on support to help you formulate and launch personalization to your patients. Say hello to a new era of personalized supplement solutions. Go to getvitaminlab.com/personalized to save $100 off your first formula.
This is like, when you get kicked in the shin a bunch of times. The second person this week to tell me about meditation, and the transcendental meditation comes up for me as something I think I should be doing and maybe teaching to my patient base literally weekly. So thank you for another kick in the shins, John.
Well, so, I know about it, and it's one of the few things I know about it, but I don't do, actually. If I'm on a plane ride, I'll do it, but I probably should have a better routine around that.
I hear you. The value can be so incredibly high. So it sounds like, for the people, my colleagues, people that I work with, your service could be incredibly, incredibly valuable. And for the patient base around here who's so interested in this, who are, really taking on some of the excellent things online, like cold plunges and improving their zone 2 cardio and doing saunas, right? And we've got a lot of intermittent fasting going on around here. People are taking care of their muscle mass. Got a lot of really good things going on. but the nutrient deficiency piece is being missed by people. And the common, I think, routine here is to find, like, say, a greens powder or multi-complex powder online and just something that has everything and just take it. I see problems with that. Do you see problems with taking an approach like that? Maybe the doses aren't high enough to be an issue. But what do you think about that?
I mean, so water solubles, for the most part, you're going to urinate out. You can have like a scurvy effect where you take a mass amount of vitamin C and suddenly stop, but that's a very short-lived thing. The fat solubles is a much bigger issue. They used to think it was a reservoir effect, but that's actually, it takes time to get the epigenetic response to go in one direction and back the other if you overshoot. I think if I had patients, I'd rather see them doing something versus nothing. But a couple things. Number one, as we grow older, our guts are just not as fit at absorbing things, and it's non-specific. So what you have a problem with, what I have a problem with, probably change over time, and the variance will grow larger. So, like, the reason why we're able to get this report is because we've seen so much blood value go by. Otherwise, people are just guessing, which probably not the greatest thing. I know you guys have a big vitamin D problem. We have a vitamin D problem down here in the United States too, but up there it's larger because of the less sun. One of the things that's really interesting about that is the absorption rate's non-linear. It's actually an S curve. And as we were watching more and more data come in, it became more and more interesting. The second part seems to be, this is observational. I'll be very clear about this. The lifestyle aspect, something that you preach dramatically, has a massive impact on what someone's absorbing. So if somebody's living on Diet Coke and Doritos, having a grain powder, their absorption rate should be next to none. And the quality, I can't speak to all the different powders that are out there, but obviously not all things have the same absorption rate because they're going to be using things as filler, and by nature, filler is going to block the absorption rate. So if you look at like the capsules that are out there, there's really only 3 capsule sizes that are used. For the most part, they make up like 95 to 99% of the market. Sometimes it's 95% filler in there. So what happens when your body's trying to absorb that or nutrients from regular food? You could actually come up with a net negative on that. It's the filler that's really the problem for some of these situations more than anything else. But
that explains a lot. That explains why my personal experiences with, for example, the powder that I created for myself from Vitamin Lab, it makes me feel something within 30 minutes. I feel good. Whereas if I take the very same nutrients via capsule and I wait a few hours, I don't notice anything. I've been recommending for people who are taking multivitamins to take powders so that they can, experience easy absorption without having to break down a capsule.
Yeah.
But the filler component, I'm sure that the binding capacity is high enough that we're not getting the full dose when we take these.
Yeah. Ironically, the better the filler, the lower your ability to absorb the vitamins around it.
Whoa. Goodness.
Yeah. Back to your question about the generic stuff.
Yeah.
And, I bring this up because it's something people are a little more aware of, probably over talked about right now. But when people talk about one of the 6 MTHFR mutations, if you look at something having folate versus folic acid in it, David, one of your things is you're pro things that are more found in nature and less pro for things not found in nature, which I think is a great thing. And if you look at folic acid versus folate, one is found in nature and one is not found in nature. I'm not going to say it's conclusive, but there's some good studies that are showing that people that are taking in the acid form is triggering their MTHFRs. So we used to think that it was, you're just not processing it. Now we think that bucket may be overspilling, and you're seeing people getting wired up, feeling like they can't concentrate. So with the best of intentions, by taking things that are using less expensive, treating it almost like a commodity, they may be setting off a series of mutations. I mean, there's 6 MTHFR mutations. There's thousands and thousands of other mutations that people can set off by taking things that aren't found in nature. So in some ways, like someone's multivitamin, maybe like having a Diet Coke and some Doritos and having a Big Mac with it.
Wow. I'm looking to learn more about MTHFR and COMT. I don't consider myself an expert. I dabble. And I've gotten criticism, to be honest, from people who consider themselves experts in this realm. And I'm interested to hear, because you had a company, right, that was focused mostly on genome assessment or epigenetic assessment, right?
We did a lot of that, yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about your gene clinic company that you had?
Well, basically, it was a clinic based on optimal performance. David, it's really similar to what you're doing. What we did was we built out protocols and algorithms. There, we did have exercise programs for people. We did have diets, but we had a lot of one-on-ones with people. And we were looking for, and you have to keep in mind, this was 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago. Our understanding of what a mutation could cause was a lot less. I mean, it's amazing how fast the technology is coming in. So we were looking to help with the deficiencies. We were doing things like getting people to train and only burning 2/3 of their glycogen levels, whether it was strength training or aerobic, getting them to spend a lot of time zone 2, but also making sure they were doing 3 and 4, but staying underneath that level of cortisol burns, helping them to sleep, hygiene, kind of a whole, David, it's you're doing a better version of what we were doing 6 years ago. But from there, a lot of observations fed into the knowledge base on the software.
I bet it did.
And a lot of it was, you read public domain studies, and it's unavoidable as you're doing this. So it wasn't that there was any sort of like secret sauce or anything special about it. It was just having one person going through this type of information, another person going through this type of information, everything that's in the public domain, and then putting that information forth to the healthcare providers on treating patients. There was IgE testing being done. It was like taking all those best of breed. So it was a less elaborate version of what you're doing up there right now. But what the takeaway was, if we could provide software for this one vertical that could take, the 25 hours to 30 hours of work, remove risk for the patient. And, here's the big thing, do it without actually charging the patient. I think we charge doctors like $1 a year or something like that.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Incredible.
But with software, you can do that, right? Because once you get past,
I was going to ask you, what's the pricing model? Yeah, that's incredible.
I think like for the first year it's $1, and then each year afterwards it's like $5 or $10 or something like that. Because once you're past a certain critical base of users, then you're basically in the black. The first couple of years we were in the red, building out the software and making it functional and usable. Before, we were doing things where we could only do things on lab values because we didn't have the underlying data. And now with Archimedes coming out, that's kind of like the big step where a doctor can say to every single one of their patients coming in the door, here's a report for you based on your demographics and maybe any of the lab values they have. Let's go get some more labs done, standard physical stuff that you'd be doing once a year anyways. And we can turn that up, make it better and better. And you'll have some people that want to really take it farther, make it incredible, but they're looking for that, those things that are really going to improve their performance. So it's good, better, best. But it does go back to that, and that came about because I got hit by a car, and I ended up with...
I was going to ask you, you're so passionate about this, John. Like, tell me how we got to this point in time. Let's go back to the beginning for you.
And you want to go back to the beginning? Okay.
You got hit by a car.
Okay, well, let me go all the way back to the beginning. I loved math growing up, and I really wanted to either do one of two things, math, physics, or become a physician. Was in the wrong place. I probably was the most failed athlete you can imagine. Tried a whole bunch of different sports, and I could check the pro card, look at that thing, and it'd show up, and when I met people that were really talented, that's humbling. You might be. I wasn't a big fish in a small pond. I was like a medium-sized fish, and I had to go to the big sea, and I was like, oh boy, like this is not going to happen. A lot of fun. It's about the experience. But kind of surprised everybody. Ended up going to the military. Felt a calling for that. Went through the selection process for the Green Berets called Special Forces Assessment Selection. Once again, really humbled. Extraordinary people show up to this, and a tiny fraction actually get through. And it turns out to be genetically predetermined in many cases. You have to have the motivation, but if you don't have certain genetic mutations, like the neuropeptide Y.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah.
What are the mutations that you need to get through that kind of elite training?
Well, one of them was a neural pet. They actually cheat swabbed us, and so I'm actually in my mid-50s, and this was 30 something years ago.
Right.
They cheek swabbed us. They didn't know what they were looking for. They're just storing it so they can compare data down the road. And it turns out, I don't remember the percentage, but it's a very high 90s. They get through the selection process, have a neural peptide Y mutation, one or two. It's a protein that everyone has, and it's associated with rebuilding really almost everything in your system. You're constantly degrading, you're constantly rebuilding. So when you have this mutation, you have more of that protein, so you heal faster. And the selection process is about taking people down as close as they can to death, quite literally, and seeing what they're really like, what the personality is like. How well, you're talking about that testing. How well do you do on an IQ test when you haven't slept in a long time, you haven't eaten in a long time? And when I say close to death, and I say this literally, they stopped running the July and August course because people were dying every year. And people were like, well, that's horrible. You can't have that. But the people they were looking for, if those people can't succeed in a mission, hundreds, thousands, or even millions of people could die. So everyone's a volunteer. You can leave at any time. You just raise your hand and say, I'm done. So it's people making that their own choice. So there's that. There was certain, there's a CompT. There's a couple other ones in there, but you still have to have the motivation. You still have to have the desire. We call it the why to get through something like that. So from there, I went over to do some special duty over at 7th Group. Then I went to Special Operations Med School. That was back at Fort Sam. They moved it since then. It was an amazing program. Kind of a little bit of everything, but a lot of trauma medicine, surgery, and then went to Reynolds Hospital to do my rotations. Once I get a great experience, I pretty much lived in the doctor's lounge and just brought underwear. I would just stay there until I ran out of underwear and take showers and nap there. ER every night, over OBGYN, and then, you did something at ENT and, once a little bit of the psych ward and kind of rotated all the way around. So it was a great kind of medical experience. And I got out and was I wanted to be a surgeon. At that time, they were contemplating capping what a surgeon can make, I think. I probably misremembering this, but I think it was like $60,000 a year or something. And I loved it. I was still kind of going down that route. Ended up working in investment banking, looking at medical devices, and found a better way to finance. This goes back to my math background. Figure a better way to finance companies. That took off, but that really wasn't my calling.
Can you speak to that culture though, John? Because my understanding of the finance industry is that they can push it too.
Oh,
they can go,
yeah,
and they can go without sleep.
Yeah,
and let's not do the IQ test like you said on the bus back to the barracks. But what was that culture like when you made that transition to go from very intense physical but also mental emotional challenges into more of a cognitive setting with people who also nervous system wise could really push it?
Okay, so it was unfair advantage. People that maybe hadn't had the hardest thing you've ever done is the hardest thing you've ever done, right? So comparatively, I hired almost exclusively people out of there. There's a guy named Terrence Pop. I'll have to send him a copy of this. I hired him straight out of what he afterwards he went to college. He didn't have a college degree before. He got a college degree. I hired him. I was gone for about 4 or 5 days, and he was sleeping underneath his desk on top of pizza boxes. Didn't go home to change. He was just going to get it done. He was from 8 Mile, Detroit. He wasn't going to go back. So that was great. But I was very fortunate. Worked for a guy named Rick Rappaport, several different firms, and he kind of let me do my own thing. And I said I was going to leave on my 30th birthday. Right around then, I left and started a fintech company called Third Pillar. Did that for 12 years. That's when Silicon Valley was a wild ride. It was a great experience for sure. Met a lot of really hyper intelligent people. Learned so much about a variety of different things. And that was a software company. We were installed in a whole series of the top banks in the world, and it was an amazing ride. We got to 2007 in the downturn, and my sales guys had really, really top-notch team. I would go in and talk to people, and they said, listen, the software can take something that takes 47 days down to 12 hours. You really don't need to tell them that they have a house of cards inside their portfolio. They don't want to hear that. mathematically, like, it's just like this itch you want to scratch, right? So the people that used our software didn't have a problem in the downturn. And I'm oversimplifying. The ones, even sister funds inside the same banks, completely melted down. And all of a sudden, I was this 35-year-old guy flying around the world, talking like the Basel Capital Court and going over the math of risk. And the name of the company was Third Pillar, and there's 3 pillars of risk.
Wow.
Silicon Valley is an amazing rush, put it mildly, in terms of it. If you want to work and you're passionate about what you do and you love what you do, it's a great place. It's an amazing place. Then I got hit by a car and couldn't come back.
Like around 2007? When was it?
That was about 2010, I think. Got hit by a car and had about 17, 18 external pins holding the left side of my body together. I was really excited about getting the pins out. That Soviet coach, he would pick me up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he would roll the doors up on this bike gym, and he had an exoskeleton to hold my body together. First, I could only use my right foot, then my left foot, and I had no use of my left arm, left hand, all that stuff. And one by one, they were taking the pins out, so it started like all the way up and kind of just down to a shorty. And they took the pins out, and this is one of those things in hindsight, you kind of wonder how you had this cognitive bias. And then once you see it at the end, you're like, okay, now I understand why. I thought once the pins were coming out, all was going to be great. And I had this arm that looked like a piece of spaghetti because it was so skinny. There was like no muscle mass in it. They said it was going to be, I think, 4 to 6 months. It was out in 10 weeks. And it was because I was in the biking gym pedaling, but I couldn't get my heart rate too high as to sweat, because you have a staph or a MRSA bug and it bottles the sweat down. You're going to lose whatever bone that is. You may lose the limb. You may die. There's no antibiotics, and I know that can stop that stuff. So Dimitri, he would put ice packs on me, giant bands, for hours and hours and hours. I was doing a lot of zone 1 training, which is really boring, but...
So you had to train, let me understand this. You had to train, but not sweat, but train as much as possible.
Yeah, I was, he was funny. When I came out of surgery, he said, I was going to go to World Championships the next year for Masters. It was pretty much completely high from the anesthesia. I'm like, that sounds like a great idea. Like, of course, that's not going to happen. But it was really great having him around. Feel the level of appreciation for him to this day is extraordinary. He would drive me back, and I would leave my left arm out the passenger window of his van. I couldn't drive, and let the air come down and kind of like clean and cool that out. When they would cut the cast off each time, I was cleaning it off with alcohol. But I thought I'd have total use of the left arm. Total logical failure. Couldn't move my hand at all. So they gave me a great rehab facility to go to. They asked me what my pain threshold was, and I said it was higher than anybody you've ever seen. I was like, that's a 49er over there. And I said, those are the people that quit out of selection day 2. So, of course, now I just wanted to get the use of my arm back. So I was probably doing a little kabuki theater there. A lot of kabuki theaters, because those guys are animals. They're savages. They are machines.
I saw my first live football game 2 weeks ago. I took my 2-year-old son.
They are amazing.
I can't believe it. They're
extraordinary.
So incredibly violent. I've only ever watched college games.
Yeah.
But the professional league is unbelievable. They are absolute savages.
Outliers of outliers. They're amazing what they do.
So you're there and you're taking it.
Yeah. I'd gotten the pins out in 10 weeks versus 4 to 6 months, and I think it was because of the blood flow. And eventually got the use back. And went to Europe, rode some stages, some of the races over there. But I was getting weaker and weaker. And it got to the point where if I was going to do a 10-minute run, for where I lived, you could kind of run like a horseshoe or two, do a master's swim program, and run back. I was running 10 minutes, and I'm just going to walk back. I was exhausted all the time. And those white noise symptoms, I had all of them. It was almost like early onset Alzheimer's, because I've always really enjoyed math. I think everybody has different types of intelligence. I'm colorblind, not very good at decorating. So not so smart there, but I've always appreciated and loved math. It was like having that name on the tip of your tongue that you can't remember. And I was having that all the time. Really frustrating. Went to several doctors, knew a whole bunch of people at Stanford, and They said, you're just getting older. And I said, well, 6 months ago, I did a sport invitational, which is the human-powered version of the Iditarod up in Alaska. You leave 4 days before the dogs. How do I go from that to this? I did the Marathon des Sables, which is a 7-day marathon where they only give you water in the Sahara. How did I age that fast? Nobody had an answer. And was looking over some of my blood labs and just noticed that things were above normal limits, but like in the 5th percentile, the 7th percentile, the 10th percentile. I never really thought about it, but when I was at Reynolds, the only time we looked at things in the emergency room was, if we saw it coming in, was it in red? Was it below normal limits? And that's how we were trained to look at things. And I look at something like vitamin D, because you were bringing that up, David, a huge problem up there. And there's a problem here too, like we talked about before, but a lot of different machines have different ways they measure, but 33 to 100 is not an uncommon one for normal limits for vitamin D. So if you think about this, you obviously round. So at 33 to 100 is the normal range. At 32.5, you round up to 33, you're fine. If you're 32.499999, you have full-blown rickets. And I'm going to bolus 50,000 units of vitamin D into your muscle every day until it goes up. That doesn't make much sense. That doesn't make any sense at all. So there's obviously, if you start digging into it, there's signs and symptoms of rickets, but it kind of goes down like a curve as you get closer and closer to the 80th percentile. Even so, I'm in the 5th percentile, the 10th percentile. And it wasn't one thing. It was a series of things that turned that epigenetic response the wrong way. And put together a spreadsheet. Did some basic farm cal, started treating myself, and felt a noticeable difference in 3 days. 2 weeks felt a lot. 6 months later, I was racing again.
Wow. Incredible.
It happens faster than people think. It doesn't take years. So when people start exercising again, people talk about calories in, calories out. It's true, has an effect. When people talk about the quality of nutrients you're taking in, that's true, has an effect. Some people talk about your adaptation to exercise. That's true. So there's all these different lenses that have to be in focus at the same time when you think about how someone's really adapting. So if you cut calories, eventually you will adapt to the calories that you bring in. It's unavoidable. That's where we're adaptation machines. Now, someone may be 2 or 3 pounds lighter than they would be, but they don't keep dropping because they've adapted to that amount. If you, David, want to see your own optimization, you need to see all these lenses coming through simultaneously. Well, if you're at this massive deficiency from an epigenetic response, you will never improve. You won't get the benefits of exercising. It's a little bit like taking a BB gun against a rhino. There's that subtle spot, that gray area of undertraining and overtraining. What you want to do is not try to swing the pendulum, but move the top of the pendulum over. So that gray area becomes, you can go a lot deeper, but you can still recover from it. And even if you go light, you have a more adaptive response. It's anabolic versus catabolic. I was in a completely catabolic state. So yeah, I started treating myself.
And you had improvements right away. Did you determine your own dosing levels? Yes. I'm working with a few people right now who have more than 10 deficiencies at the same time. And a few of them have digestive issues. So there's an absorption problem there. So we're trying to go around that.
Sure.
But other people do not have an absorption problem. So I'm trying to determine, and we'll be working with your company, I'm sure, trying to determine appropriate dosing strategies for these individuals in front of me. And it's not the easiest thing to do. How did you do it for yourself? It was combing through the data?
This is going to sound way too simple. Farm calc, right?
Farm calc, okay.
Farm calc, right? You did it, David. I did it. I actually liked it. Most people didn't like it. I was racing with a friend of mine, Wes, who could do it faster, turn it in stomachs, the test out. Basically, it's just algebra. It's a series. I mean, it's a matrix and you're doing more than one thing, right? But it is at its core linear algebra. So I'm in the 20th percentile. I want to be in the 80th percentile. There's a 60th percentile difference comparatively on the max dose. What does the NIH, the CDC, what's the consensus on this? And, it can vary some, but you always go to the largest bank and the governing bodies, and then you just do the math for it. Now, it took a little while to do the research, right? And that, unfortunately, when I did it on myself, it was a very rudimentary version because I was just pawing through the NIH. And even then, I wasn't looking at aminos. I was doing fat solubles, a couple of water solubles. It was a rudimentary version, for sure. Yeah. So, right now, the software, if you combine it at the same time, does about 12 million simultaneous calculations. But each calculation is linear algebra onto a matrix. So it's just the simple side of it. And that's why I say, like, if someone had the time and they wanted to look up everything for a patient, it's all out there. It's all open source. Like, the FDA publishes max dosages. It's not in one place, so it just takes time to look these things up. And then you say, okay, it's a little more complicated if I want to compare a 25-year-old versus a 65-year-old, for example.
Right.
And then male versus female. Okay, well, I have to find those values. That's where it gets a little more complicated. So, I think, David, you and I have joked about this, that sometimes I have to be hit by a car to figure something out. But it was an amalgamation of things I had worked on my whole life. So it was kind of like an easy thing for me to go, well, you're a hammer, and looks like a nail, so that's how I'm going to treat myself. And it really worked.
Absolutely. How long did it take you to get back to 100%?
No, that was a little more. I would say about a year, but I was an outlier. I mean, like, I was pretty banged up. The surgery took a while. I still have some plates left in me. There was a couple other things going on in my life at that point emotionally that were a little bit rough, that it makes us all realize it's not just a physical aspect. We are all, you take someone, you may have gone through basic training like you did, right? But you're still emotionally affected by things. And the older we get, the more affected we are by them. And we can be in denial about it, but, labs don't lie. You don't treat a lab, you treat a patient. But when you have before and after labs on someone, you see them going through a job loss, a divorce, a loss of a family member, a loss of a pet. These things have active, unavoidable responses inside our epigenetic responses. It's not a question of being tough or strong or something like that. It's just the way we're built. As we get older, that top of that pendulum is more likely to be flip over in the direction we don't want. So I think we could all probably think of a relative that was older, seemingly doing well, and they had a couple things go wrong, and suddenly they just slipped away from us and we said goodbye. And it happens very, very quickly as they get older and older. So what we're trying to do is push the top of that pendulum back over. Can't stop the pendulum from swinging from side to side. Life happens. But how do you optimize yourself? How do you stack the deck in your favor? How do you put all the things you can in your favor so you get to live as long as you can, but also enjoy your life as much as you can, perform as well as you can, and do all those things? My muse would happen to be a 3,000-pound car that hit me. It was actually an Audi, but, it had a whole bunch of other things fortunate that happened simultaneously for that. So, the clinics was a good point. It was just a requirement to read through tons of different studies. Some were more valid, some were less valid. Can't tell you how often. David, I think he and I were joking about the magical bark from the rainforest that was blessed by dolphins and pixies, right? There's always somebody coming in, David, should I take this? And you're like, well, you can, but let's start with things that are not in the center of a supermarket. But let's start with some real food, right? Like, those are better things. So we're looking for things that are really tried and true. It's a little bit boring, right? But there's something really reassuring about boring. We know that it works, and you're reducing risk with it. So
absolutely. I think it's an incredible service to humanity, and I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad you're safe and healthy, but thank you to the Audi for providing us with the nail.
Yeah.
This is what we needed. So listen, Jon, I really appreciated our conversation today. I think the integrative physicians, naturopathic physicians watching this will get a ton out of this and be inspired by the ability that you've had to bring the AI, bring the technology to this domain so that we can speed up our treatment programming and create optimal plans for people. Because that's really what we're trying to do anyhow. And to make it faster will allow us to help more people and do as much for the population that we're serving as we can. So thank you very much. Where can people find out about you online, Jon? Where can practitioners learn about your company and you as a person?
I love talking with practitioners. Some of my best friends are people who use the software. Like Dr. Lionel Bassoon, he's in Manhattan. Dr. Tyler Southwell, he's in Arizona. So friends, Dr. Aquino, he's in Huntington, New York. Friends all over the place from that. So email me, just the letter O for my last name, o@igscode, like a code breaker.com, o@igscode.com.
Incredible.
I respond to every single healthcare provider, every single one that reaches out.
Well, you're getting an email from me shortly. Thanks so much for your chat today, Jon. I really appreciate your time. And I think you've provided us an incredible episode for Personalized, and we're grateful to speak with you. So thank you.
Thanks, David. Appreciate you.
See you. Have a great day.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us for today's discussion. What about today's podcast resonated with you? Be sure to tag at Dr. David Deiser and at Get Vitamin Lab. If you're learning from and enjoying this podcast, please let us know by subscribing to our YouTube channel and follow the show on Spotify and Apple. And don't forget to leave us a review. It's the best way to support our podcast, and it helps others find us. To learn more or book a demo to explore what personalization could do for your practice, please go to www.getvitaminlab.com/personalized.